Dear listeners, welcome to Whimsy Woven Stories, where Reddit's tales come alive in mesmerizing narratives.
One sunny morning in March 2017, I decided not to drive to the airport at the usual time. I knew all the flights were a bit delayed, Jacinta had already gone to work at the bank, and I leisurely had breakfast, preparing to go out. But when I was about to leave, I couldn't find my car keys. Where did I put them? Did I leave them in another pair of pants? Did Jacinta wash them? I searched everywhere, but couldn't find them. Sometimes when you're looking for something and can't find it, you decide to give up after turning the whole place upside down. That was the case that day. I searched through my entire wardrobe and all the drawers, and finally, I went to Jacinta's drawer. I searched carefully, turned the drawer upside down, and discovered something I wasn't supposed to find. A diary fell out, and a used condom fell out from inside it. It looked like it had been used for a long time. It was withered and broken. I was shocked because I had never used any condoms in my life. I picked it up, took the diary, and what I read changed my life. It was only Cynthia's handwriting, and as I read, tears began to stream down my eyes, and I was filled with anger. My life would never be the same. I was afraid that my anger would lead me to do something I might regret. To distract myself from what I had seen, I started cleaning the room, putting everything back in its place. I found my keys. They were still in my car, which drove me to madness. I started the engine and began to rush towards my wife. I was so angry that I didn't know where I was or how fast I was going. Suddenly, I heard a loud noise, and then everything went black. I woke up to find myself looking at white lights. Am I dead? I looked around and saw a lady in a nurse's uniform, thinking, do they have nurses in heaven too? Suddenly, she touched my forehead and said, wake up, big guy, you've been asleep for 5 days. I was still alive, damn it. My memory started to come back, and I thought it would have been better if I were dead. A few hours later, Jacinta came in. I didn't say a word to her, and she cried, thanking God for my life. I thought to myself, that bitch. I was transferred to a larger room where there were already 5 patients lying in bed, and I was the 6th. A few weeks later, I returned home, able to move around and fully mobile as before. However, I was waiting for my insurance money so that I could buy a new taxi. One beautiful Saturday, I sat at the breakfast table, drinking coffee and reading the newspaper. I read an article and asked my wife, do you know someone named Jose Alvarez? He seems to work at your bank. She asked, what about him? He was found hanging from a bridge last night, with his tool in his mouth. It must have been the cartel, she added. According to the police, it could have been a jealous husband. They found out he had relationships with many women, and it could have been one of the husbands. I could see my wife gasping and walking out of the room. I smiled and walked over to her. Based on my wife's diary, young Jose Alvarez only sent compliments and praise about how good she looked and how well she took care of herself. She wrote that she felt Jose was flirting with her a lot and she worried he might be trying to seduce her, but she wrote that would never happen. She pointed out that being a woman in her 40s, it made her feel young and attractive again, and she didn't realize how much she missed that thrilling feeling. She wrote that the reason for keeping this diary was because she couldn't wait to tell someone about it, but she couldn't tell anyone because her several girlfriend had boasted about crossing the line flirting, and she always scolded them harshly, even considering flirting back, knowing that these things could easily get out of control and end in a messy divorce. Obviously, she couldn't confide in her husband about this issue, hence the diary. She promised herself to keep it light and never let things go too far. She also commented that I was as boring as watching an albino cow in a blizzard. She noticed that I recently joined a bowling league on Wednesday nights, and she hardly noticed my absence. She complained that if this was all she had to look forward to in life, she would go crazy. I looked up from the diary and asked myself, why didn't she say something to me? I didn't know it was that bad for her. I have to find a way to improve things. Then I went back to reading, and my emotions shifted from sympathy and sadness to anger and hurt. She began to rationalize that having a brief affair with Jose would add a little spice to her life. She added that I could benefit from it as well. She had other reasons, of course, all nonsense. Why she should do it, but just once. In the end, she decided that if she was very careful and cautious, she could do this vicious thing for our benefit without being discovered. They planned and agreed to meet and have fun. She had all these romantic ideas about what this and that would be like. But it all fell apart after he took her to a cheap motel on the outskirts of the city. It was a smelly room, but her lust overcame the stench. However, Jose was not what she expected. He was loud and rough in his movements. All her expectations of a bonfire encounter turned to ashes. He drilled her while verbally abusing both her and me. Once he was done, he stood up, got dressed, and left her alone in that room. According to her account, she promised herself never to let that man touch her again. She kept to this when Jose planned another meeting, and she refused. In her next article, she wrote that she got what she deserved from this affair and swore never to do it again. She couldn't bear to think that she might have hurt me because of what she had done. She promised to turn over a new leaf and be a better wife as much as she could. How fucking great that bitch cheated on me. I remembered how good she was to me. In the following months, the lying bitch just tried to alleviate her guilt. Well, at least she learned her lesson, or did she not? When I approached my wife, she was sitting on the edge of our bed, holding a tissue. So I can assume, based on your reaction, it's the same person. You don't know him, right? I asked, slightly twisting the knife. He was just a guy who worked with us for a while. He wasn't the best guy in the office, but he didn't deserve to die like that. I was thinking about his wife and children. They didn't deserve that treatment. According to the article's implications, he was a serial womanizer, and the list of suspects was as long as your arm, if they could find them all. What they didn't deserve was a father and husband like that. Now his wife can find a real man to take care of her, just like I take care of you. I used the phrase, real man, and from the tremble in her voice as she spoke, she didn't lose the meaning. I leaned in and kissed her on the cheek. As her head was still down, she couldn't look me in the eyes. For the first time in a few weeks, I walked out of the house with a pleasant stride. In the bitch of the law of cause and effect, a week later, it was another Saturday, and I was sitting at the breakfast table with a newspaper. When I read the title of an article on the 4th page, I read it out loud. I continued to read and noticed his name was Ignacio Ayala, a 29-year-old man who had been divorced for a few months. At the sound of his name, my wife rushed to the bathroom and began to vomit. I stood up from the table, finished my breakfast, and went to check on Jacinta. She was still on the floor in front of the bathroom, and I took a wet cloth to moisten her, which she took and wiped her mouth. What did you eat last night? Did it not agree with you? I think I'll be okay. It's just the way he was killed was so brutal, she said. So you don't know him? The newspaper said he was also a serial womanizer, and they're worried there might be a pattern developing. They interviewed his ex-wife, and she said it was just a matter of time before a jealous husband caught up with him. I guess he had a long list of wronged husbands behind him, if they could find them all. Maybe the police will narrow down the list, and they see the overlap between the two. What do you think, honey? You used to work with them. Do you know if they were the type to go to the bank? Maybe you should call the police. She interrupted me. I didn't know either of them well enough to know who they would be with. She answered a bit flustered, then she calmed down and continued. I can't be of any help to the police. Well, but if you could help them with any little detail to find a murderer, you might be able to prevent another thief of a wife from being killed. Wait a minute. Maybe it's not such a bad thing. Killing off some scumbags might send the right message to the others. Are you saying that, baby? That's a terrible statement. No one should die like that. Of course, you're not defending those scumbag, selfish bastards, are you? I mean, if I thought those bastards had anything to do with you, well, I can only say they would have gotten away with it easily. I have to torture them first for a while, let them know why they should die, and then let them go to the next world. I laughed. No, of course, I'm not defending them. I just think it seems unnecessarily brutal. That's all. If you mean you would make them suffer first, you scared me. I never knew you could be like that violent. She said, that's because no one has betrayed me like that. I sincerely hope you don't find out how disturbing this thought is to me. I have to go to work. Do you think you'll go to work or take a day off? I'll be fine soon. I feel much better. I walked up and left. Ignacio Ayala, her second lover, recently divorced, a smooth talker. She mentioned more in her diary entries about what she did to feel better. After her affair, then noticed, since I was oblivious to it, she should pull back to avoid arousing my suspicion. It was early October when he was first mentioned, and how young and desirable he made her feel. He even brought flowers to her desk several times. She told them that she had to tell everyone they were from Jack. Otherwise, rumors would start. He accepted this because she was worth it, no matter who got the credit for the flowers. This bastard agreed, and she agreed to a brief affair with him in his apartment. He lived near Brick Street, and they could get there quickly without taking up more time that she would later need to explain. This time, he tried to have a long-term affair. He went all out, with rose petals on the bed, soft music playing, and candles lit in the dark bedroom. He took more time to seduce her than Jose did, much less determination than we said before. They made love. Yes, she used the word, made love. It was not like she and Jose had sex. She made love with him. I was already angry and confused that she had succumbed to the second lover, but this damn making love made things worse. She continued to comment that it turned into a formal affair, which was supposed to be a one-time brief affair, and she regretted it. But she did not regret the romantic and beautiful feelings of their first few meetings until he became controlling and obsessed with her, being intimate through the back door. She commented that this time it only took a few blowjobs and a meal of my famous meatloaf, and everything will be fine. The last time I almost went too far, after all. Now that I've had two lovers, he's still completely clueless. Huh, she laughed, the way I love and trust her. I felt the need to strangle her. Almost a whole week went by until the next Friday night when Jacinta stopped sneaking glances at me. She must have finally convinced herself that since they were all skirt chasers and they were all killed and castrated, it was just a coincidence. Hell, the second one might have been inspired by the first murder. Saturday morning arrived, and so did our breakfast table meeting. For the past 2 Fridays, she had been scared, but I was looking forward to it. When I went in, she immediately started, "You came home late from bowling last night. This has been the second or third week in a row. Did you do something you shouldn't have? What did I do wrong? You've got to be kidding me. I'm as boring as watching a cow with albinism in a snowstorm." I wonder if she would recognize her own words. She still gave me a few puzzled looks as I read the newspaper. I opened it, and right in the middle of the first page was a photo of the police spokesperson trying to reassure everyone that the killer would be caught soon at the murder scene. I read the details and declared, "Jacinta, death has struck again." This is what they're now calling him. They're sure it's the same person. This time the guy was found dead in his car, parked at a popular makeout spot near the marina, and this time his genitals were found tied to his hand. I put down the newspaper and saw the fear on her face. His name was Sergei Ablash. She screamed and ran into our bedroom. I followed her with a sneer. She didn't regret her second affair as much, so she wrote very little about how she was making it up to me, because she didn't do much. Most of her comments were about how good the first few meetings were and how surprised she was that she couldn't control herself and only do it once as she had planned. The entries became sparse again until late March when another young man showered his attention on her. It only took him 10 days to get her to agree to have lunch with him in his car. He parked the car at a makeout spot. They had a quick lunch, and then they started to get intimate. It made her feel like a teenager. During their third date, she was shown how to put down the passenger seat so they could do it right there, and they did. She only had 2 orgasms, but they were big ones because the thrill of possibly being caught made it hotter. She tried her best to freshen up and get back to work in the afternoon, but she was still worried that someone would notice. Each time they were together, she described how she had absolutely incredible orgasms and wondered if she could be some sort of exhibitionist without knowing it. She ended the affair because once his request for masturbation became a bit too frequent. Of course, I followed her. I finished my meal. There was no reason to let a perfectly good breakfast go cold. She was recovering from her crying when I came in, and when she heard my voice, she looked up. I saw the fear in her eyes. She really thought I was killing her lovers, and she might be next if she was. I could only silently mock her. "I took your reaction. Last night's murder victim. Shit, that's 3 to 3. Why would you know you? Why would you feel bad for these womanizing men? Why would you?" I let the light above my head seem to flicker. "Please tell me you didn't have anything to do with these guys. I don't know how you could think that. Were you accusing me of messing around with these bastards? What the hell are you talking about, Armando?" I thought she shifted gears too quickly. It couldn't be anything but planned. "I'm not accusing you. I just think it's a hell of a coincidence that you know all 3 of these bastards. I'm just messing with you. I know you love and respect me too much to risk our good years for a few minutes of forbidden pleasure with these cheating bastards. I just wonder why you didn't feel uneasy until I read out his name. You sat there completely calm until I said Sergei Abalash. That's what made you break down." She looked away. "Yes, I knew him. It wasn't because I knew him. It's just that it happened to someone I know." "That makes sense. Maybe I should ask you, since you think I might know something, if you killed them." She looked up at me. "My dear," I said, kissing the top of my head, "if I thought you had an affair with one man, let alone 3 men, you wouldn't be sitting here asking me questions." "I have to go." I strode out of the room, knowing the knife had been twisted deeper. I was laughing all the way, replaying those scenes in my mind. This Friday night, Jacinta waited for me to come home. I came home from bowling a little later than usual, but not as late as the almost midnight arrival of the previous weeks. She couldn't sleep anyway. Her nerves were on edge. After all, in the past 3 Fridays, her first 3 lovers had been killed, in the order of their affairs with her, each killed near the place they had met with her, and each with their genitals cut off, indicating their own personal preferences. Jacinta scrutinized me carefully as I entered. I smelled the beer on his breath, but there was no blood on his clothes. "What are you still doing, my dear? You usually would be asleep by now. Do you have a guilty conscience? Did you spend too much on clothes this week?" I asked. "No, I didn't spend too much on anything this week. I have a bit of indigestion, that's all." In 10 minutes, she thought I was asleep, innocent sleep. She thought it was ironic, when I thought it was because I had discovered her affairs and was tracking down my old lovers, and he should have killed them while they were reveling. But if he knew, why didn't he confront me? Why didn't he kick me out? Or at least call me a slut? It's like he entered another personality, knowing and killing, but not knowing that personality exists. It doesn't make sense at all. He looks no different than usual. I'm sure he doesn't know. He couldn't possibly know. If he knew, it would kill him. It would eat away at his soul. If I can't act differently or reveal my little moves in any way, I have to be brave. She turned over, closed her eyes, and resolved to get some sleep. Just as she was settling down, I moved, and she could swear I mumbled almost incoherently, "Go to hell, bastard." Her eyes were wide open at this point, and she knew sleep would not come for a long time. Saturday morning arrived, and I had the newspaper in my hand. Well, let's see what the news is this morning. I picked up the newspaper, and she waited nervously for the news of another possible victim, because, damn it, she had another affair. I was silent for a few minutes, and the tension gradually escalated. Just as she thought there was no killing last night, I broke the silence. Well, it happened again. Another person was found dead in his office, naked and lying on the table. This time his genitals were found lying in the middle of his chest, pointing to his mouth. What do you think about this, my dear? I'm sure I don't know what it means. Why are you asking me this? Because I know your bank collaborated with his company a few months ago, so I'm sure you met this person. His name is Vicente Garcia. Jacinta fainted and slowly slid from the chair to the floor. I sneered as I watched her fall as usual, finishing my breakfast and recalling another part of her diary in my mind, detailing how she was involved with a project funded by his bank and how excited she was thinking about whether she would find her next lover there. It seemed that she would eventually end up with Vicente, the son of her boss, who was the vice president of marketing at her company. She described how she had chosen him, even though he would be her oldest lover at 39, 8 years younger than me, and decades younger than the previous 2. She told him he was a bold flirt, but she believed they could come to some mutually beneficial arrangement. He was so romantic when he locked the office door and swept all the papers off the top of his desk with one arm, just like in the movies. His preference was to ejaculate between her breasts. She met with him several times a week, but only once a week in a special meeting when the rest of the company was excluded, just before lunch, so they could have the office to themselves. After their 4th special meeting, she was tired of cleaning the semen he left on her face and hair, and she told him that if he did it again, they would have to end it. He told her that it was his favorite way, and most of the time the only way he could climax, so she should get used to it, or he would tell her husband. She countered that he should tell his wife. So the affair ended. She commented that her favorite part was their romantic first time, and she really enjoyed it. She thought that through a series of one-night stands, say once a month, she could get more romance. Then she said that's too risky, because it's not a big city. If she had so many lovers, sooner or later it would get to me, and she didn't want to end her marriage because sooner or later she would tire of these affairs, and then she would need and only want me to take care of her in her golden years. Her long-winded reasoning continued that she was a good wife because she deserved it. After all, I had 4 affairs, and Armando didn't have a clue. He no longer paid attention to me, so I had to get it from somewhere. I wonder who my next lover will be. Maybe someone with a British accent. Wouldn't that be very sexy and romantic? Maybe he looks a bit like Brad Pitt. I can hardly wait to see who he will be. Jacinta slowly came to on the kitchen floor, and when she saw the newspaper, she sat on the chair, remembering why she was there. It was 4 former lovers. She actually didn't have any former lovers anymore. Where was Armando? How long had he left her there? Did he just leave her to go to work? That would mean he had lost all feelings for her, and he must know about her affairs. Just then, Armando walked into the kitchen with a wet cloth. I've been out for how long? Just long enough to get this wet cloth for you. It seems you're now at 4-4 for his victims. That looks like a hell of a coincidence, doesn't it, baby? Are you sure you don't know anything that could help the police find the killer? I asked jokingly. I'm sure I don't know anything. Just leave me alone. Down, I was just joking with you. If you can't take a joke, you're going to have a hell of a time putting up with me in our retirement. You'll have to make an effort too. It's not like you'll be spending your golden years with Brad Pitt. I patted her on the head, just as I did when I left. Jacinta was tired from lack of sleep, nervous all week, and every sudden noise made her jump, even the starting of the fireplace. Armando acted very normally, except that he hadn't made any sexual advances for a long time. After he left to go to the party on Friday night, he started thinking about all of this. Could he know about my affairs? She wondered. She knew he was a passionate person, and given the years they had been together, there was no way he would do nothing if he knew he would confront me, or I would come home to find all my clothes at the front door. Maybe he was gathering evidence. He was just suspicious of something. If he was just suspicious, why has he been hinting that I might know something? I should go to the police station, especially if he might be involved in their deaths. It doesn't make any sense. I just wonder what he's thinking. One thing is for sure, tonight I want to follow him to that damn bowling alley to make sure. Just then her phone rang. It was her current lover, Pancho Aguila. Hey, sexy, I'm really looking forward to tonight. He's still playing bowling. Yes, he is, but I'm not sure it's a good idea for us to get together tonight. I think he knows more than he's letting on. Maybe we'd better cool it for a while. I'm sure you're just paranoid, hot stuff. If it will make you feel better, we'll make sure he goes to play bowling. Then we'll start our party. I'll watch him leave, then I'll pick you up, and we'll follow him to the club. Once he's inside, we'll hurry back home and start the party. You know, I can't wait to have you back inside me. I think you're right, Pancho. I feel the same way. Her better judgment was clouded by the way he made her feel. His huge penis felt great inside her. This would be their 5th time having sex. Ironically, it started on the same day he found her diary, and there was no sign of slowing down. The romance was gone, but being completely filled by Pancho overshadowed any thoughts of missing the romance. He usually left around 5:45 p.m., so meet me across the street at 5:30. I can't wait to have you back inside me. Me too, baby. See you tonight. Just as they planned, they followed him to the bowling alley, and he walked in obliviously. They waited on the street for a few minutes to see if he would come out. He didn't, and they hurried back to her house. Hurry up, lover, she whispered. I want you to do me on his bed. The stupid guy has no idea about us, and the thrill of not getting caught under his nose excites me. He's so stupid to let a hot chick like you out of his sight. You should know better than to be with a man who neglects you and goes to play bowling with his friends. As soon as they entered the house, clothes started flying off. 90 minutes later, Jacinta said it was time to clean up, and she went to take a shower. When she came out, she gasped at the sight before her. Pancho still lay on the bed, a large knife protruding from his chest, lifeless eyes staring at the ceiling, the bed covered in blood. A small, thin man was tying something that looked like fishing line around a base of Pancho's large penis. He said calmly, I'm trying to make it bigger for you, Justina. I know how much you like it. It's so big that I don't even have the heat to cut it off like the others. She fainted. When she woke up, she was lying on her back on the bed, naked, Hugo's somewhat shrunken large penis inside her again, Pancho's overwhelming weight on top of her, her wrists tied to his wrists, her ankles bound with cloth strips. She couldn't move at all, her underwear stuffed in her mouth. I apologize for not introducing myself earlier, but you fainted before I could. My name is Rafael Cono. I am the brother of Armando Cono. He said very calmly. I saw your husband in the hospital. Lying in the bed next to me, he never realized who I was, under the bandages on my face. I could see the pain in his eyes, not the physical pain, but the pain you brought him through your affairs. I comforted him, and then I pumped him for more information, such as where he went to parties every Friday night and where he found her diary. I broke into your house and read your diary. One day when you both were at work, I made a copy and used all the information inside to track and plan revenge against those bastards who thought they could sleep with another man's wife and get away with it, tarnishing a marriage. Over the past 4 Fridays, I have killed one of your lovers every Friday night while Armando was enjoying himself, so he would have 20 or 30 witnesses to prove his alibi. Because these despicable bastards are all serial womanizers, I think the police won't be able to figure out which wronged husband did it, as everyone's list would be quite long, at best 50% to 60% complete. Tonight, I will kill for the last time. When I leave, I will turn on your ceiling fan. Please note the cloth strip tied to one of the blades. I have calculated that when that cloth strip runs out from the cardboard roll it is on, It will run for nearly 6 minutes and pull those documents from your nightstand onto the space heater, causing a fire. If the police investigate, they will not find any trace of the cloth strip because it will burn completely, just like the cloth strips tied to you, and they will think you and the bastard knocked the documents down in the throes of passion, were overcome by smoke you didn't notice, and you two foolishly made love. So tonight you will die, knowing that your blatant promiscuous behavior led to the deaths of your 5 completely despicable lovers, as well as yourself, an unrepentant cheating slut. I read your diary. You really are a bitch. I can only hope that he will agree with my decision that you die. After all, he will be better off without a cheap slut as a wife. We all agree on that. He turned on the wall switch to start the fan, and a few seconds later, she heard the back door close. She saw the cloth strip begin to unravel and began to panic. She struggled to move Poncho off her, only able to slightly move her arms. She began to try to call for help, but the underwear in her mouth prevented her from being heard. As Raphael had predicted, 6 minutes later, the fire started, and the smoke filled the room. As the smoke filled her lungs, she noticed the lights gradually dim, and she fainted for the last time. The police carefully looked at Armando, but he had many alibis, security footage from the bowling alley, and the lover's manhood was still intact, so they could not link it to the other crimes. They thoroughly checked his financial situation over the past few years and noticed that he did not have enough money to hire someone to do these things. They checked the whereabouts of his close friends and family during the murders, but found no clues. Armando even voluntarily took a lie detector test and passed with flying colors. When Armando left the police station, he recalled his time in the hospital. He remembered a man lying to his left, his face covered in bandages. He could see his eyes. They looked scary. Armando couldn't move much, but kept turning his head to look at the guy. The next morning, he saw him looking at him again, and then he spoke. Esposito, rompio el corazón, your wife hurt your heart. He nodded. The guy then closed his eyes and fell asleep. In the evening, he looked at him again and said venganza, vengeance. Armando nodded, yes. El Sagado Castigaravis Tevita, death will punish you. Live your life. Then he turned away and fell asleep again. Armando remembered that at this moment, he smiled.
Thank you for listening. Please share your opinion about this story in comment section. Also make sure to like and subscribe to the channel.